Hello, everyone. Welcome to VTOL VR. I haven't been on it for a while, and when I got back, I discovered some new things. The multiplayer has been officially integrated within the game itself, which is fantastic. I never got to grip with the multiplayer mode before, so I'm really happy to see that the multiplayer is now a part of the game. And the second new thing is the new combat helicopter AH-94, which is what we're going to be flying today. I also have a bit of a new thing of my own. You will see a bit of mixed reality cockpit. I hope you like that touch. So let's get on it. What we're going to do today is we're going to familiarize ourselves with the helicopter, with the cockpit. There are two seats. You can, as you can see, you can switch between different seats. I'll tell you what this is and what the other one is, but we will keep this one as a default. You can fly and you can do everything from this pilot seat as well as from the gunner seat. So it would be best if you can fly it with somebody else, and then you can utilize the full capabilities of this wonderful machine. So let's get familiarized with the helicopter itself. So on the left-hand side, we have the standard MP3 thing that we have in other aircrafts. We have here the jettison store management, or store jettison, so you can drop off some of the racks that you no longer need if you want to lose the weight, but this is not something that you will be using a lot. Then we have the handle, which basically tells how much the engines are going to be pushing the rotor. So once you move it to flight, that's where you will keep it, and so you will only use this on the ground, never in the air. On the left-hand side, we have the rotor fold, which is basically folding the rotors when you're on a carrier. Parking brake, the usual. Landing gear, rotor brake. This is something that stops the rotor from spinning once you switch it off. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of these MFDs, and you will see they're pretty much as with the other aircraft. On the right-hand side, we have the standard auxiliary power unit, which is used to start up the engines because the battery itself is not sufficient. Then we have the two engine starters. We have the new feature on the comms, so we have the push-to-talk. So basically, the push-to-talk works by only pushing the button and then releasing the button once you've stopped talking. So you can either use that on the A button on your right switch when you're holding the stick, or you can move your hand to your throat, press trigger, and then release if you want to talk without grabbing the stick. And then everything else is pretty much standard. So the way to start this craft is main battery, start the APU, let that spool, switch on the MFDs, and here we have the status of the engines, rotors, and torque. We have the fuel calculator, and we have the autopilot. But by default, we will keep this on stat. Here, we can use the navigation, and here, so the TADS is the new thing that replaces EOTS in F45 or TGP in the F26B. So we're going to switch that on, and we're going to move it to color for the time being. And we will use this to help us see through plane by placing this on our head, as with other aircrafts. So once the APU is on, let's start up the first engine. You're going to see the engine spooling up here. You can also see the RPM of one engine and the torque rising up. Let's close this window. It's less noisy. So now once the one engine has spooled up, you can move this to idle and switch off the rotor brake. So now the rotor is going to start spinning. So in the meantime, I will explain a little bit about sticks. We have two sticks here, but we have three handles. On the right-hand side, we have the usual flight stick with a weapon switch on the B button, and we have the trim on the joystick, so that helps us do minute changes on the pitch and roll of the aircraft. And then on the flight collective lower one, we have the yaw trim on the joystick, we have the hover on the Y button, and we have the wheel brake on the trigger. On the left combat, on the collective part, you have the second handle, which is combat. So this is where you control the SOI, so you can move, as you can see, you can move this around. You can switch. You can toggle the SOI between two MFDs, which is a nice new feature. And then you have different mode, so you can have a pylon tilt, fire CM. I haven't explored those yet, but for today's mission, we're not going to be needing that. So once you switch to the, let's switch on the second engine. So once you switch to the second, you can also turn on all the displays. They will not affect the displays in your other cockpit. So here, rather than having two handles on the collective, you have the weapon one and you have the flight one. And here, this is basically the same, but it allows you to manage the weapon system without touching, in case you're hovering, without touching the flight controls. So this is really nice. And so from here, your teammate will be able to manage all the weapon systems and everything. So it's really, really nice. And here you can grab two sticks. One moves, the other one zooms. So right one zooms on the joystick, and this one moves. So you can really, really nicely manage the targets. What I did notice when I switched here, the cam stayed in the other one. So let's go back. Let's go back here. So now with both engines running, we can kill the APU and we can move this to flight. And now we're going to see the torque is rising as well as the rotor. And then once the torque goes down, it means the rotor has already achieved its inertia and it's now spinning with the assistance of engines. And we are now ready to take off. So what we're going to do now, this, if you go to the flight training mission of the AH, so no enemies, no weapons or anything, it's just about flying. We're going to do the basic flying if you started this for the first time, and we're going to do a bit more intermediate afterwards, so just to see how you can progress from one to another. Okay, so important thing to mention is that on your flight collective you have the Y button, so the upper button on your joystick, which engages the hover autopilot. The only trick is you cannot engage it whilst on the ground, so you have to be airborne in order to engage it. So that's the tricky bit. So we're going to use the hover autopilot in this first part of the mission. So once everything is ready, grab your stick and then gently start rising up. And then once you are in the air, press the autopilot hover. And as you can see now, with the collective, we don't need the right stick anymore. With the collective, you can now increase the altitude. If you leave it there, whatever you do with your right stick, the aircraft will be gaining a little bit of altitude.
Okay,
here,
enough.
it will be gaining a lot of altitude and so on. So if you are right in the middle, as you can see on the lower part of the screen, if you're right in the middle, it's not going to be gaining any altitude. It will be maintaining the altitude. And now you can manage the aircraft, but the maneuverability whilst in hover mode is very, very limited. You will see that you are going to have a hard time rolling or pitching forward and backward, so it's only used in a close quarter situation, or if you want to manage your weapon systems whilst you're hovering, because the most difficult part about this aircraft is flying and managing the weapon systems, as we will see in some of the future missions. I'm aiming to get this done in about 3 or 4 videos. First one will be about flying, second one will be about weapons, third one will be about combat, and maybe a fourth one about some strategies, missile avoidance, and so on, because it's different being in a helicopter than being in an aircraft. So now let's go back down where we started from. We are going to move a little bit backwards just to see where the helipad is. Okay, it's right beneath us. So the first part of this mission was just get up 50 feet in the air and then come down.
Okay, now for a short hop over to the next pad.
And now the hover is engaged, so we don't need to touch the right stick at the moment. Let's get a little bit up in the air. Okay, and then move altitude back to the default position. Pitch forward a little bit. And then let the plane level. It will carry on its speed, but it will be slightly losing the speed. Okay, and now look at the velocity vector. Make sure that you lower the collective so that the velocity vector is roughly where you want to land.
Alright, Okay, slight turn and a little bit further to the next pad.
Second landing. We're going to do the same now again, except this time we are going to twist the right joystick a little bit. So we're going to yaw to the right and then pitch forward, gain a little bit of altitude because this helipad is slightly on a higher ground. And you will notice that the plane behaves differently left to right, so it's not very symmetrical. It's probably because of the way that the blade rotors are running. So you have to point your nose a little bit to the left of where you want to be in order to be going straight. And this is mainly applying in the hover mode. So now, as you can see, I'm looking at the velocity vector and I'm positioning it right in the middle of this helipad. And there it goes.
The next stop is a smaller landing pad in the suburbs.
Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to go a little bit further out. So as you notice, we are very slow in hover mode. So we're gonna get some altitude. We're gonna yaw to the right to make sure we are pointing roughly where we need to go. So as you can see, the horizon line that you see on your helmet display, on the heads-up display, it is the line that tells you how high you are in relative to the other. So we are now right above the treetops, and the numbers on it, they are nothing but a compass bearing. So one is 10 degrees, 2 20 degrees, and so on. So 35 is 350. As you can see, on top of the screen we have 353. That's our proper compass heading. On the right hand side, you will notice we have two different altitudes. We have 59 meters, which is above the ground, and 128 meters, which is above the sea level. So previously you had to toggle between one and the second and the other, but now you can see both at the same time. The little cross in the middle that I'm pointing now with my with the TADS, this will show you the posture of the aircraft, whether it's moving forward, side to side, or backward. And the length of the line that will appear later on tells you how quickly you're going. So now, we're going to grab the right stick, we're going to grab the flight collective and switch off the hover and try and maintain similar altitude and speed as we did before. Now, very, very small movements, don't do anything too quickly. So if you want to go forwards, pitch forwards and increase the speed slightly to maintain the altitude. Okay, and then once you're happy with the speed, just let the plane level, let the helicopter level, and then when you get close, switch on our autopilot, make sure that the collective is in the middle, let go of the right hand stick, and then we will let the helicopter glide slowly into position, and it will stop. It will reach 0 on the speed, and it will reach it will maintain the same altitude. Okay, and now we can grab the stick and we can yaw to the left because our helipad is right there. Okay, and now start decreasing the speed and gently move forward. Wait for the velocity vector to come into place. There it is. So you see, with the raising of the collective, you can move it forward and so on. So now we are heading right straight for the helipad. Okay, not right in the middle.
Okay, this one's between a bunch of high-rise buildings. You're going to have to be careful descending into the landing zone.
Okay, so now the helipad is in between the buildings, the high buildings, so we're going to approach from the top. So this is the easier way, more safe. So let's get some altitude. And we are going to yaw to the right. So that's where we need to go. And then you can see how the line is now going up towards the top of the buildings. So we're not clear yet, but this will be sufficient. We want to be taller or higher than the first row of buildings. So let's settle down. So we are in a suspended flight or a hover flight. So we're gonna grab the stick, we're gonna grab the flight collective and press the Y button to disengage the hover. Again, try and maintain the same altitude and same posture, and then lean or pitch forward a little bit to gain some speed. If you pitch backward, you're going to be gaining more altitude. If you pull the collective lever up, it will give you more altitude, more power. So now everything is in the balance. Rolling left to right, pitching forward and backward. So it's always a balance between the right stick and the flight stick. Okay, so now as we are approaching, press the Y button, enter into a hover mode, let the right stick go, and then let the aircraft again basically come to a halt. As you can see, it's shedding speed. This is where we need to land. Don't worry if you overshoot, we can always turn around. Okay, now we're going to use the right stick, we're going to yaw to the left. Okay, and now let's start losing the altitude. Just make sure there is no building under you. There is one, but a short one. So we're gonna pitch forward a little bit. Okay, again, another pitch forward. Again, let the stick go, losing more altitude. Oops, see, I didn't spot this one. So we're going to move even further ahead. And again, lose more speed. We are directly over it.
Getting a little trickier. The next one's on a rooftop.
Okay, so we're going to stop here. This basically covers the basic part of the flight. So hover, exit hover, enter hover, land, and so on. So this should give you the basics to start with. We're going to switch back to the initial helipad by restarting the mission.
Get up and running and prepare for takeoff. Your first challenge will be to rise to 50 feet and then land right back where you started.
Okay, and now we are not going to be using the hover. Okay, rotor brake off, move to idle. Once this light goes off, you can switch on the next engine. then kill the APU, move to flight. So the same deal again, except that this time we will go much faster, and you will see how I'm flying without the hover mode. The only challenge is to get straight up and back down on this helipad without the hover mode, because you are instinctively moving your stick a little bit, whereas with hover mode you're going straight up. Okay, so everything is ready. Let's get up. You can see we can do so very quickly. Let's get to the 50 feet.
Okay, it's high enough. Bring it back down to your pad.
Okay, now I'm going to moving back so I can see where I'm landing.
Okay, now for a short hop over to the next pad.
Okay. And now, as you can see, get some speed, slightly forward, manage your collective, and then pull back and land.
All right,
okay.
Slight turn and a little bit further to
next
the next
one,
pad.
again, up, slightly lean forward, move the collective up in order to gain a bit more altitude, and then start immediately slowing down by pitching backwards and then managing everything with the collective. So here, there we go.
The next stop is a smaller landing pad in the suburbs.
Again, we go up. Let's get some altitude. Pitch forward. So now we're doing the same thing we were doing with the hover autopilot, except we're not using the hover pilot, we are just using everything manually. So once you get close to where you want to be, pitch backward and manage the altitude with the collective. Keep an eye on your speed.
Okay, this one's between a bunch of high-rise buildings. You're gonna have to be careful descending into the landing zone.
Okay. You see how much quicker we are without using the autopilot for hovering. Okay, let's get a bit more speed. Again, get some altitude. Make sure that the line is clear of all the objects that are between you and where you want to go. Okay, and now pitch backwards. Now we have the visual. So now gaining altitude, so you will bring your collective down in order to decrease speed and gain altitude. And we're going to fly in through these, between these buildings. Just make sure you're not going really fast. Again, I'm pitched backward to lose speed. Now it is a good safe speed for landing. About 50 to 70 kilometers an hour is fine, no more than that. And touchdown.
Getting a little trickier. The next one's on a rooftop.
That was a bit too hard. Okay, let's get straight up. Now I have to manage this with a stick. Look at the buildings around you. Make sure you're clear. Okay, that's where we want to go. Again, pitch a little bit forward. It is not too far, so no need for you to gain a lot of speed. That way you will be quicker in losing that speed. So we are now at about 150 kilometers. Let's get a bit more altitude to have a better angle when we approach. And now pitch backwards, collect down, more backwards to lose more speed, and keep an eye on your velocity vector. Steady approach.
Nice. Now we're gonna hop from one roof to another.
Okay, second roof. So let's go up. Yaw to the right. Okay, now we need to fly in between the buildings. So let's plan our strategy. So we want to make sure that we approach from the right side. So we're going to clear this very tall building. And we're going to make a U-turn whilst slowing down. Again, keep an eye on all those antennas and the buildings. Slow down. Okay, and now you can bring the collective down. Controlled descent. Keep an eye on the velocity vector and your speed. Okay, and then gently bring her in. Oops.
Alright, let's get out of the city. The next one's on a dock.
Okay, again I did that a bit more suddenly. Okay, so let's get straight up. Make sure you clear all the buildings. Okay, the dock is over there. Let's approach the dock. Let's line up with the dock and then approach it straight on. Okay, and now we can level the helicopter. No need to gain any more speed. Gently tilt backwards. And let's keep an eye on the velocity vector. It's nearly where we want it to be. Again, tilt backward or pitch backward. Lose more speed. And then you will see as you lose the speed, the vector will start coming down, which you can then counteract with your collective. Again, it's all the balance between the two sticks. You'll get used to it pretty quickly. And it's much easier to land and manage this aircraft than it was with any of the vertical takeoff crafts we had before. Whereas before it was a nightmare to land on a cruiser, this time it's a piece of cake, as you will see.
Good work. Now for a bit of a longer stretch. We're moving on to the next city.
Okay, we're gonna go all the way up there. So let's get the speed and the altitude. And now, here you will have the challenge because you need to go over the bridge and on top of a very tall building on a town which is already on an altitude. So as you can see, if I pitch down, gaining speed, if I pitch up, gaining altitude. So let's make a balance of it. And you can now see the cross and the line I was telling you about. And the little circle indicates to what your joystick is telling the aircraft to do. So it's the posture of your joystick. Okay, now we are the clear of the pylons. We can fly in between these. And you can see if you increase the speed, you're going to be losing the altitude. There is no way against that. So it's, you know, tiptoeing between one and the other depending on what is a priority for you at the moment. Right now, we're trying to gain as much speed as possible without losing too much altitude. As you can see, the collective is all the way to the top. There is a cruiser. We are going to be landing on it in a few minutes. Okay, so we need to gain more altitude. We can see that the horizon line is still not above the tops of the building. Okay, we are currently flying at 330 kilometers an hour. 4 kilometers to go. So once we get below 2 kilometers, we're going to start maneuvering the craft into a landing position. Okay, so now start pitching backwards and lowering the power on the collective. Keeping an eye on speed. And now the velocity vector comes into play. It's helping us guide us towards the final destination. The speed is still a bit too big, but we're going to mitigate when we're going to sort that out once we approach even closer. Again, pitching backward a little bit, keeping the velocity vector with the collective roughly where we want to end up. Okay.
Okay, this is the final challenge. Landing on the cruiser.
Okay, so final challenge. Let's get up. Okay, so the cruiser is to our right, and it's heading right to left, which means we have to get behind it and line up with its motion. So landing on a cruiser you can't do with the hover autopilot, because you need more maneuverability, which is why I didn't want to try and do it in the previous part of the tutorial. So we're gonna get behind the cruiser. Now this time our approaching speed is going to be a little bit higher because the cruiser is moving. So we're gonna aim to be at about 120 kilometers roughly. Okay, so let's see which way it's moving. And now start rolling to the left and pitching backward, losing speed and making that turn. Okay, you can see the line, you can see the wake of the cruiser. We're gonna try and align with that. Okay, losing more speed, collective all the way down. And the velocity vector is now coming back into play. So we now have a steady approach towards the cruiser. A bit too much speed. Okay, so this is a good speed, around 100 kilometers an hour, as I mentioned. Keep it right in the center. Small movements. Don't rush yourself. Be very, very patient. You're not in a hurry. And touchdown.
Awesome job. Looks like you've really mastered flying this thing.
So there you have it. At the end of this, all you have to do is basically pull this lever all the way to the off position, switch off the MFDs, we don't need them anymore, put the rotor brake on, so that the rotor brake will now stop the rotor from spinning. You can feel it by the shaking of the, and you can see, you can watch the bubble head. And then once all that is done, just kill the power. And that's it. So I hope you enjoyed this flight part. I'm not too happy about how I handled it. I should have done it better, but I was paying attention to so many things. And I'm just trying to sort out this new mixed reality thingy that we have in the upper left corner or upper right corner. So yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this. Hopefully you will find it useful. If you think I'm doing something wrong, let me know in the comments. In the next video, I'm going to be looking at all the weapons that are available for this craft and how to use each one individually. And we're going to look at some of the weapon systems in this craft and how you can manage them.